Yeah, man, I mean, you gotta understand something that, like, in the late 80s and the early 90s, like 89, 90, that's when Poor Righteous Teachers had dropped, you know, Time to Say Peace, and that's when Rock This Funky Joint had come out, and Tony D was on the radio. He was on, you know, he was on Raw Deal on WPRB, and for me, I'm a white kid, like a little kid, you know, like 13, and just finally realizing a pick won't stay in my hair, and that, you know, I'm not necessarily well liked in hip hop. And you got to think about the music that was coming out at that time. I mean, you know, before PRT, you know, you still
it was
had,
like X Clan,
it
was more Afrocentric.
Yeah. But you have like Public Enemy, that was strong, Rakim, Big Daddy Kane, you know, and you know, I was confused because I was trying to use the language and the slang, but not really coming from the streets per se. I mean, compare it to a nice suburban area and I'm from the streets, but compare it to the projects and I'm from a suburban area. So, you know, having a studio here and being affiliated with these different guys, you know, my father having the studio and having these guys from the hood come into the crib, and you know, I was influenced by that on a personal level, because I'd be down there playing my NES and they'd be down there just chilling with me and talking, and I was already rhyming. I was rhyming since '86, because it wasn't just because my dad had the studios, because I liked hip hop. I was a big fan of, like, you know, LL and the Fat Boys and Run DMC and everything. You know, it was harder to find on TV and on the radio than other stuff, but I was willing to go the extra mile to find the hip hop. And then with these people rushing into the studio from Trenton, you know, in the local area, it was just like a, you know, just a snowball effect in my interest in the culture. So having Poor Righteous Teachers and then having Tony D, a white guy, you know, kind of at the center of that world, really helped me, you know, carve out a path of identity for myself as a white person in hip-hop. And it was uniquely Trenton, it was uniquely Jersey, in the sense that these guys, if you listen to the Poor Righteous Teachers records, man, they're from the local area. They're from 5 miles away at the most. You know, from any place that I went during my day, they were 5 miles away or less. So, and having Tony D be in the center of that world, being on the other side of where I was living in Princeton, doing his show.
And he was like unapologetically like Italian.
Yeah,
you know? He didn't care less. Like, he wasn't like Search. Like, Search is like...
No. You know, Tony D was proud of his Italian
like, Search made us all feel guilty, you know?
He was more proud, though. You know, like, you know, it must have been a white guy who started all that.
Yeah.
You know, but Tony D was proud of his Italian roots, but more later, if you listen to his earlier records, he was also trying to fit in. I mean, he was on the first damn track on the Holy Intellect album, man. Tony D at the time wasn't in his rhyming prime yet, and he was on track 1, you know, Harvey. He was pushing a lot of buttons at that time, but when he came back later with that Crusaders for Real Hip Hop album with Razi, and you know, had different guests on there, you know, not only did his production evolve, but he addressed the race issue for the first time on That's How It Is.
I ain't got soul, I got rhythm and a big. Sorry for being blunt, but that's how it is.
The whole thing addressed, you know, being white in hip-hop and what that identity crisis could mean, because Tony D was willing to express it on wax on that record, That's How It Is, from the Crusaders album. Try to find somebody, even Search, that addressed it as cleanly, thoroughly, and honestly. Now, I'm not saying that Search wasn't being honest when he addressed it, like on Gasface or any of the other records of the Cactus album or after, but I'm just saying that Tony D really came out with how he was feeling.
Yeah, he did his thing, but it was like a different vibe. Like, you know what I mean? It was almost like more like Pete Nice, like, where he didn't really like dabble.
Tony was hanging out with the gods, and he knew he wasn't black. You know, I mean, Search seemed like he was trying to find identity for himself. Like, you know, he had the big box fade and everything, and you know, black cat is bad luck, bad guys wear black. He wanted to address the issue, but Tony D was past the point. He understood that he wasn't black, but he understood that he was entering into a culture that wasn't his own, and he was being accepted by some people and rejected by some people. But he wanted to stand firm on his square with his own identity and say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I've come to understand by being in this culture. And you know, here I am. You're gonna have to deal with me. I'm here now. And being a little kid that was wondering about that kind of thing, seeing Tony be brave enough to face the onslaught of criticism for the fact that he was white, and especially with the artists he was surrounding himself with, that really kind of created kind of like a North Star, or you know, a pathway for somebody like me that was coming up.
And you've worked with like Razi and cats from the Hip Hop Crusaders, like Tone produced stuff for you.
Yeah, I mean, anybody worth mentioning in Trenton, you know, from...
Well, the Hip Hop Crusaders, real quick, that was MC Law?
Yeah, Tony
D and Razzie.
And Razzie and Low Key was on tracks. You know,
okay,
and there was other guests.
Who was the third MC, the second? Well, he was doing more scat, like, you know, more ragamuffin stuff or whatever.
And Razzie, like you hear in the background, and like Razzie was phenomenally talented. He was a kid back then, man. I mean, and Razzie was and is phenomenally talented, and you know, he's literally an island in hip hop. As far as I'm concerned, nobody did the kind of thing he did back then, and nobody's done it since. I mean, he put a spin on the reggae style, and you know, and
it was almost like Fugees before the Fugees, like when it was like
he added that. Did it with such style and grace that it was uniquely Trenton. You know, you could say, I mean, I guess if you really look at it, like Power A, Boulevard Mossy, Suicide Posse, these guys all put in elements of chanting into their music. You know, Trenton, where we from and all. But Razzie, when he came, he just kind of added a little bit of a pitch to it. Like Razzie took the chanting and added just a little bit more flavor, something almost mystical.
It was Trenton, where we from? That was Katie Ranks, right?
Well, yeah, but
Almighty and Katie Ranks.
And you know, the Boulevard Mossy stuff.
But it was like, what I'm saying is, it was like a reggae influence in Trenton hip hop. Even Wise.
See and understand that this breed not so savage by far. What? East Star.
I mean, Wise comes off kind of like a mystical figure in hip hop. Like he's come out of nowhere from another planet. And not only that, he knows 120. He's mastered 120, and he's speaking the slang in a way that's even more coherent with the 120 than Kane or necessarily Rakim. Wise is using it as a language.
I know YZ. I believe he's from what, Hightstown, right? Or
YZ, you know, YZ,
but he still is kind of he's very synonymous with Trenton, you know.
YZ is synonymous with Trenton, but I mean, as much as most people wouldn't want to admit this, YZ is synonymous with Trenton because he's, you know, intrinsically tied to Tony D. They're inextricable from each other. I mean, YZ's career and Tony D was Trenton. You know why? You know, so one thing about YZ too is that, you know, he was getting hated on a lot. You know, and I didn't know this until later because I was just a kid watching him on Yo MTV Raps before I met Tone. But later on, in building with these dudes that came up at that time, you know, YZ got his fair share of dirt kicked on him, and you notice that YZ's not playing though.
I take blows, but I throw bolos. I go solo in a toe-to-toe.
So if you go and you listen to some of those records and he came back, you're going to hear a tinge of that anger towards the Trenton area on there. You're going to hear the Wise.
Was it Crocodile Dundee or was that?
Yeah, but not just limited to that. I don't even know if all of it came out, you know, but the you know, YZ came back a number of times, and there's been a number of, you know, rocks and pebbles thrown. YZ's a dope MC.
But there was a lot of cats out of there, right? Like I think B Chill, wasn't B Chill from B Chill, rest in peace, from Hightstown, and there was YZ, Bobby Fine. He's out in Texas now, but yeah.
From Funk Family.
Yeah.
You know those, and they work with Tone too.
Who was in the Funk Family?
Funk Family, Bobby Fine. I don't know if it was Styles. I think Styles was in the Funk Family too at one time. No, he was in Black Sperm. I don't know, man. That wasn't on my radar at the time, to be honest with you. You know, the Funk Family were recording, but I wasn't hip to it.
So I remember, like, you were saying, like, just growing up, like, I'm gonna ask it again, but like, you were saying like how you used to go to like PRB and there'd be all your favorite rappers there, like packed in like sardines. Like, basically, talk about your experiences like going up to PRB and listening. And what that was for you, like, you know, and the immediate scene, like.
No, I mean, at first it was Thursday nights, 10 o'clock. You know, Thursday nights, 10 o'clock. I didn't care how late I had to stay up. They were playing the new Ish. I mean, PRB had it where nobody else had it for us. I mean, if you couldn't go on the internet. You know what I mean? You couldn't go on the damn internet to find dope hip hop. So if it was new, you were literally reliant. The only channel you had to get new hip hop was through DJs, and you had to have Tony D or G or somebody else that you know, shifted in and out. Zulu, you know, somebody else, Kaz, anybody.
But Jay Ski used to have a show there
Jay Ski, yeah. So if anybody, you know, if you wanted hip hop and you were a teen, it wasn't no internet. There was no really other channel to get it except for us, for PRB, because, you know, it depended on the frequencies in which you could attract, you know. So PRB was my frequency, man, and Raw Deal was the show. And I was close with Father Ramsey at that time, and that was only 90, 91. And, you know, he was running up to PRB, he was on the radio, and you know, that was my link. That was my link to everything. You know, these dudes that I met through my father's studio at Hotspot. So I had a connection that nobody else my age had. I was only about 13. And, you know, if I didn't know the guy, I at least knew a guy that was friends with the guy. You know, and so going up to PRB, you know, you walk in, And you know, you had a ton of brothers just sitting there in the waiting room ready to freestyle. And you know, it didn't really matter what too. Sometimes Tony would bring beats, sometimes they would just play instrumentals, sometimes cats would go on one after the other, after the other, after the other. But it was a kind of scene in hip-hop that was so immediate to what was going on in pop culture. I've never seen anything like it since. I don't see that kind of excitement now.
It was like a community, and it's crazy because you'd be listening and it'd be like, because I've downloaded the archives, like on that Normal Bias on the blog, and they'll have like, they had stuff like Apache was up there, or you know, like DJ Polo. Like so many like
New York heads.
People were just there on the humble, just chilling.
Tim Dog came down to PRB.
Yeah.
You know, look, the thing was, though,
were you there that night or not?
No, I wasn't there. No, and honestly, when I went there as a person, I was a patron. I mean, and later, and towards the end of it, like in late '93, '94, then I would start going down there as an artist with the Mighty Buddha Heads. But up until that point, I was a patron. I was just somebody going in there chilling and trying to, like, you know, leech on and just kind of like maybe be a fly on the wall and peep things out. And cats knew me. I mean, the thing is that cats knew me, but they didn't really necessarily know me as an MC. I was only about 13. I was kind of either the guy behind the Soul Survivors or the guy behind the other groups that they might have recorded in my pop studio, because I was still a real young kid. And but I knew who everybody was though, and they would have been shocked. I could have just busted out. I know you did this, and that. I could spit your rhyme. I was a fan, man. It was a humongous, you know, scene to be a part of that really is more unique than anything else I've experienced or experienced in the area as an adult. Meaning, I've never seen a time since that early '90s period where you could go up and see a packed house of MCs that were on the radio and had maybe singles and, you know, vinyl available, all in one spot. You know, with that amount of energy and that amount of excitement for this new thing, and that was so exclusive. You know, for no money. You know.
Yeah, this was like predated, I guess, payola. Well, that was going on, but
you had to be dope, man. I mean, you had to be dope because cats could shut you down. I mean, that's the thing. There were so many people that were hungry that had dope rhymes that wanted like 2 minutes.
So did you ever do any on-air? Did you have any on-air freestyles that were like maybe like
later down the line? But honestly, man, I mean, I was born 3 or 4 years too late.
How'd you meet Tony D?
I was working at a restaurant because I was about 19 years old. A girl that I worked with at the restaurant, she came up to me. She was like, "Tony D's out there," and you know, I was like, "Tony D's the man." And you know, it had been a while since I really, you know, if I really caught anything from Tony D. And I was, you know, I was looking like a nerd. I had my little waiter uniform on and everything like that, my little Applebee's thing. And you know, it's embarrassing, man. And, you know, having to do a job like that. And I saw Tony out there, and I was like, "Oh, it's Tony D. That's Tony D. And I gotta come off." And you know, I had 3 or 4 rhymes in my head, and I was like, you know what? Fuck this job, fuck my life, fuck the money, you know, because this is Trenton, and if I want to get on, the only way I'm going to get on, I've been trying every other way, and the only way I'm going to get on is from the inside.
That's a crush group shit, yeah.
And that's Tony D. And I came out there like, what? I was like, "I'm Elliot, can I help you with your order?" And Tone was looking at me like, "Elliot," like, because I said that name because I didn't want people like shitting on my government, you know, my real name. That's the name my wife's got to call me now. That's the name that I got to be called at my job. I didn't want that time period of my life to be defined. I didn't want my name to get a dent, you know, so I was using the name Elliot. Tony D laughed, and I was telling him, I started dropping names about people that we both worked with at that point, you know, like, and you know, Tony D knew some of them, and you know, he seemed interested, but he was with this girl, and they were eating lunch, and I was like, before I go, I got to rhyme for you, because after I rhyme for you, you're gonna want to put me on. And you know, he was looking at me, and I didn't realize this at the time, but he wasn't really in a position to put me on, but he definitely was in a position to make some beats for me and to give it a shot. You know, and it led to Shane Records respect this vinyl up there. I mean, that's ultimately what that was the first product of our collaboration together. And you know, so I got up and I just rhymed in front. You know, everybody's sitting there. I got my man over here. It's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you know, I got my man over here having the coffee and having like the apple burger and stuff. And I got other people all around the bar sitting and just looking at me like I'm an asshole. But you know what? You know, Tony D, he looked as amused as he was impressed. But I definitely made an impression. And later on, when I followed that up, you know, a little while later, doing the Jenny Jones show and everything, we'd already worked together a couple times, but he was sold on trying to get me out there and get us out there. And so if you listen to our early records together, it's clear that that was our comeback moment. I mean, it didn't happen the way it was supposed to happen or the way we wanted it to happen, but Tony definitely put in 100% of the effort that what it needed for it to happen.
So you meeting him that day and working with him, that led to ultimately the Respect This single. And and also
Look,
G.O.D. EP.
the G.O.D. Album, yeah, and you know, we recorded half of that in Studio 4, you know, the same place that Lauryn Hill was recording.
This was years after Speak of the Devil.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Speak of the Devil was 94, and in 97, we started officially recording what would later be the tracks that ended up on the G.O.D., the God album.
And that was all
Great
Tone.
Cypher Destroyer, and that was all Tone. That was all Tone. And, you know, Tony believed in our collaborative efforts, man. This was something that he saw as the next thing after Scott Lark. You know, PRT, Crusaders, you know, other projects, Scott Lark, and then, you know, he was working with Strong Peeps, and he saw the Shawn Lov albums as that next thing, that next step in his career and the first step in my career. And it didn't, you know, we were late. We were 2 years late to really keep up and catch that hip-hop wave that had kind of been crashing, you know, starting in 97, and by the time we got it together in like 99, it was just too late.
He was over at Rough Nation at the time, right? Or
he was working with Rough Nation.
He was like an A&R or something?
Kevin Glickman is a lawyer who had put together a whole bunch of the deals, like the Poor Righteous Teachers deal, and Kevin Glickman, and you know, he was on board too. You know, we were shopping this around. We went back to 4th and Broadway in New York, Tone and I, and Tone is hilarious, man. Tone would go into a record label and just scare the shit out of everybody. Like the A&R dude would come out and say, "Hi, nice to see you again, Tony." And then Tony would be like, you know, like their old golfing buddies or something. He'd be like, you know, "So what have you been up to lately?" You know, in the back of their head, like, "You haven't made a record in 4 years." You know, like besides outside of the country. And he'd be like, "Oh, I've been killing people for money." You say it with like a straight face. "I've been killing people for money. Play it or die." He had little stickers he used to put on all the vinyls he gave to the DJ. "Play it or die," with a little cartoon character he had me draw of him literally killing the DJ who wouldn't play the record. You know, Tone was getting on that mafioso shit, and it was like, you know, you had the Wu Gambinos and everything at the time, and everybody wanted to be like black quasi-Italian and everything. And Tony was, you know, he thought that shit was laughable because he spent 4 or 5 years prior trying to make Italian cool, and now it was funny because it flipped the script.
Sopranos,
everybody black wanted to be Italian, and Tony D was like, "Jesus Christ, man!" It's like, I can't catch a fucking break. I can't even make Italian cool, and I'm fucking Italian. You know, you're gonna bust my balls because I'm too Italian trying to be Italian. I'm not black enough to be Italian.
Yeah, and he had that song like Cosa Nostra and shit. Like I'm talking about the one on the single, like the first one with the "We Love the Hotties" and all that.
I like Italian hoagies, but I don't call it a hero. I'm down with Joe Pesci and his boy Robert De Niro. Now Martin Scorsese didn't direct Freddy, but my nose directed me to that big bowl of spaghetti.
You know, for a while there, it became popular to be like a black Italian kind of thing in hip-hop. It was like mobster, mafioso stuff. And Tony was a little bitter for having to basically, you know, run around and kiss ass for years because he was white. He was a dope producer. You know, he's a dope producer. He worked with dope artists. But he had to kiss a little more ass than your average dope producer just because he was white. And then he turns his head, and before you know it, it's popular to be Italian.
So, alright, change of pace. Who was like, who are some of your influences coming up? Like, not just in the Trenton scene, but just overall, like MCs and, you know, that made you want to pursue a career, you know, and
basically everybody, you know, everybody you would expect I listen to coming up, you know.
I know you're a big Daddy Kane and Slick Rick fan.
I was a big Juice Crew fan. I was a big Slick Rick fan, a big Rakim fan, a big Boogie Down Productions fan, and big MC Light fan. I mean, the thing is that, you know, at the time, you know, Yo MTV Raps was a channel for kids my age that were really interested in hip-hop. And I went back and I researched it, though. So even in, like, I really first got turned on by, like, the Fat Boys in '84, Fat Boys record, Fat Boys Are Back. I'm not ashamed to say it. You know, later on came, like, you know, Run DMC, Beastie Boys, you know, all the early records that everybody, any classic, you know, true school hip-hop head is familiar with, I was on it. I was a follower of hip-hop, so anything that anybody else my age, or maybe 3 or 4 years older, was following hip-hop, that influenced me.
So who were the groups, like, locally that influenced you? Like, they were, like...
The cats coming to my pop studio, Soul Survivors, were a major influence over me when I was little. Jay Nice and Diz were both dope MCs. Father MZ.
And he did Fit With The Flow and...
Yeah. And you know, they did Fit With The Flow. Soul Survivors did Fit With The Flow, and they did Nice and Easy. And you know, they started working with my pops around 1990, and they just followed through until 1994. And my dad was basically on a mission passion to try to get those guys signed. So they would record demos and then go over the demos and remix and remaster and reconfigure their demos and do whatever they could to shop that material and get it out there. And there was a full-fledged effort to get Hot Spots artists out, and we never really got out the way that we were supposed to, or the way that we tried to. And there was a lot of things that were in place, but there was just a few pieces that didn't fit. And unfortunately, that time it passed, so we're left with a humongous catalog full of hip-hop that's equal or better than anything else that came out of Trenton at the time.
And when you started performing, you were going to places like, what, the Blue Funk Cafe, I think it was called? Or in Philly. You were going to Philly, but you were also going to New York Poet Cafe. Like, you did the battles, you did...
There was a couple different stages.
When did you get into the battling? Like, when did that whole...
The battling came later out of desperation. I mean, I didn't want to battle. I was a battle MC in terms of including, like, battle raps in my records, like a la Big Daddy Kane or Rakim or somebody else who just wants to be the best MC. But as far as, like, 8 Mile style, like, coffee house battling stuff, that's not something that was of interest to me. I only did it for the exposure and for the hopes that maybe I would get a little bit closer to some other people that were in the industry that could maybe possibly get me in a situation where I could put out records.
So talk about the fateful night of the Blaze battle.
Look, man, let me tell you something. There's somebody out there in this world that has a copy of the Blaze battle, and they're going to see that I rock the house. The fact is, I was a white boy outnumbered by 50 outsiders. What do you expect?
But you know, those crazy are both from Jersey, but the other crazy part is, I don't think they even mentioned that. I think they like mentioned another white rapper's name, like he had so and so. It was some other white guy that got like pelted with bottles, and it was like.
Let me tell you something.
At least they didn't mention you. Is what I'm saying. Like they didn't mention it. Like
Pace One, you can ask Pace One this. After the battle, he came up to me and quoted one of my lines. He said something about Mick Jagger. I don't remember the line. It said something like that. Blah blah blah. Swagger and Mick Jagger. I was rhyming Swagger and Mick Jagger back in '98, man. And you know, the Pace One came up to me afterwards and said that was a real ill line. It sucks. He basically was empathizing with me about what just had happened, which is basically I just got shitted on because I was battling an outsider and I was, you know, in a room filled with outsiders. You know, so it didn't matter who was up there. There was, you know, there was a lot of talented MCs at the building.
But you also did like the wetland stuff and
yeah,
like
wetlands,
but aside
SOBs and you know and you.
So you probably it doesn't sound like you like that really. Like
no, man. You know
it was definitely a cool scene, especially like a lot of budding stars. You know came. You know like Wordsworth. There was like a lot of like even Eminem. You know C. Ray's Walls. Yeah, all those guys. Yeah.
I clobber some of these guys. You know what I mean? And you know I think about it at night, like before I go to bed, and you know like okay, so here I am in my mid-30s, and you know almost all my records have tanked, and I've got a small underground following that couldn't support my coffee habit, but I fucking beat Pac FM and C. Ray's Walls in the same round.
So do you think it was being in Jersey that kind of like gave you that like you can't make it like out here, like just being a Jersey artist, and especially when people got.
I don't know why the fuck I didn't make it, man. I go over this again and again and again. It drives me nuts. I actually, the inner dialogue that I have with myself, on a regular basis. I'm very successful. As far as money, I've got some money. I've been successful in other ways, man. But I've failed miserably in hip hop, miserably. And I go over it over in my head, like Jesus Christ, I'm getting crow's feet. I've got a goatee full of gray hair, and my fucking rap records, barely anybody heard them. And I spent this whole time, repping Jersey hip hop, and it's got me to fucking nowhere. And
it's gotten you on the blacklisted probably. It's like
look, I turn it over again and again. I think the thing about Jersey is that there's potential here. There's definitely talent here, but we're not New York, and even if we were, it doesn't really matter anymore. As far as New York's concerned, I mean, this whole East Coast hip hop thing is a thing of the past.
It's like trying to get to that chick who's like the belle of the ball, and then you finally hit it, and you're like unimpressed. You're just kind of like
But to be honest with you,
like you've tried to woo New York all this time, and you finally got to look up her skirt, and you're just like
You know what, man? The vibe is look. This hip hop thing is now something that's going to be lived out in obscurity, whether it's Jersey, New York, California, or Texas. you know, it all boils down to East Coast hip hop in different parts of the world. Think about Passing Me By. Listen to those samples. Listen to the Summer in the City sample and the combination and the way that loop sounds. That's New York hip hop. It doesn't matter where it takes place. It's New York hip hop. It's influenced by an absolute root of hip hop.
Definitely influences me, you know. And what I love about Jersey though is it kind of put its own sling to it, you know, its own spin on it. Like,
shit, yeah, man. Look at our producers. We got Mark 45 King. We got Diamond D. We got Tony D. You know, and those are just like three of the food groups from the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, if you look at Jersey now and you go, I'm telling you, you know, fuck another state. Look at some of these other states. Go look up their producers and they're on some fucking hillbilly shit, man. Now, Jersey has, you know, from experience, and it's not just because I'm from Jersey, because I work with cats all over the world, and I'm telling you, the Jersey producers almost always strive for that grimy, late 80s, early 90s sound. It's signature.
Not right now, but yeah.
No. Look, let me tell you something. I've seen more kids from Jersey, you know, because now you're in a time on the internet where people from all around the world can hit you up with their music. I check it out sometimes if it's from somewhere else, like maybe even the UK, but I'll also check it out if it's from Jersey. 9 times out of 10, you know, I'm going to listen to something from somewhere else and it's going to be garbage. It's less than 9 times out of 10 that it's garbage when I hear it from Jersey. Look at that kid we were talking about, The Cause. He's like, what, 18, 19, and you know, and he's doing real hip hop, and he's a kid. You know what I mean? You got a lot of MCs and a lot of producers out here that still respect the fundamental aesthetics of what hip hop is supposed to sound like, and I think that we outweigh a lot of other states in that respect.